The moment arrives often without warning. Perhaps in a sterile hospital room with the steady beeping of machines. Maybe at home, surrounded by loved ones whispering final words. Or sometimes in complete solitude under a starlit sky. The physical form grows still. The heartbeat fades to silence. That final exhale escapes. The breath that once flowed so naturally throughout an entire lifetime, carrying with it the essence of countless experiences. Yet what most people fail to understand is that in this precise instant, an extraordinary transformation is already underway. Something profound and entirely beyond our physical perception is taking place. Modern science has begun to acknowledge what ancient wisdom traditions have long known. Consciousness exists independently of the brain. Recent studies in neuroscience and quantum physics suggest that awareness might be fundamental to the universe itself, not merely a byproduct of neural activity. This growing understanding helps bridge the gap between spiritual knowledge and scientific inquiry, offering new perspectives on what happens when the brain ceases functioning, but consciousness continues. The consciousness, that fundamental essence of who we are that animated our earthly vessel, initiates its journey of separation. This isn't a sudden disconnection like unplugging a device. Instead, it resembles the careful unraveling of an intricate tapestry woven from decades of relationships, feelings, recollections, and decisions that shaped our existence. Near-death testimonies offer us glimpses into this mysterious transition. Individuals who have been medically declared dead for brief periods consistently report similar phenomena. An overwhelming sense of weightlessness, profound tranquility, and the distinct awareness of floating away from their physical form. Many describe observing their own body from an elevated perspective, as though suspended near the ceiling. Others mention hearing conversations happening around them while being completely unable to participate. Their awareness continues, perhaps even heightened, though now completely detached from their material vessel. What's particularly fascinating is how these experiences transcend cultural, religious, and geographical boundaries. A Buddhist monk in Tibet, a Christian farmer in Iowa, and an atheist scientist in Tokyo often describe remarkably similar sensations and visions during their brief encounters with clinical death. This universality suggests we're dealing with fundamental aspects of consciousness rather than culturally conditioned beliefs or religious programming. This soul-body separation involves powerful energetic forces. Ancient wisdom traditions speak of ethereal connections that bind our spiritual essence to our physical form, sometimes referred to as the golden thread or astral cord. This luminous link gradually weakens and eventually severs completely, marking the absolute end of our connection to the material realm. However, this departure isn't always smooth or effortless. When death occurs suddenly through accidents or violence, or when someone has formed intense attachments to worldly possessions and relationships, the separation process can become disorienting and distressing. A profound shock occurs. The departing consciousness may attempt to linger, bewildered by the lack of response from those around them, confused by their unheard pleas. It's comparable to awakening from an incredibly realistic dream, only to discover you're in an entirely different reality. The emotional impact of this realization can be overwhelming. Consider someone who spent their entire existence believing that death represented complete annihilation, suddenly finding themselves fully aware, hovering above their lifeless body, perceiving the grief of others, and sensing vibrations they cannot influence. This marks the commencement of an entirely new chapter, yet one that begins without guidance or clear direction. Those who have cultivated spiritual awareness during their lifetime often experience this moment with greater ease and understanding. Their consciousness recognizes what is unfolding. They sense the approach of spiritual companions, luminous beings, and protective guides who arrive to assist with the transition. There exists a tender, nurturing reception, like a loving embrace from the realm beyond. The final breath signals not an ending, but rather a profound beginning. While the soul achieves freedom from its physical constraints, it retains the complete essence of its earthly experience. Every joy, every sorrow, every lesson learned. The body is left behind, but the consciousness departs carrying the fullness of what was lived. This is where our exploration of the soul's incredible journey truly begins. Picture yourself awakening in surroundings that feel recognizable, yet strangely altered. Colors appear more vivid or strangely muted. Sounds seem to emanate from within and around you simultaneously, and the people in your vicinity behave as though you've become completely invisible. You call out desperately, attempt to make physical contact, but achieve nothing. You exist in a state of being simultaneously present yet utterly unseen. This describes how many souls experience their initial awakening in the spiritual dimension. Immediately following the disconnection from their physical body, consciousness doesn't diminish. Instead, it often becomes remarkably clear and alert. The challenge arises because the soul frequently remains unaware that death has occurred. This lack of understanding creates profound bewilderment. The departing consciousness notices that something fundamental has changed, but struggles to comprehend exactly what has happened. This confusion exists because the soul continues to carry the imprints of physical existence. It maintains the same sense of identity, identical thought patterns, familiar fears, and unchanged memories. Consequently, it often attempts to resume normal activities, returning home, conversing with family members, completing unfinished business. Yet nothing responds to its attempts at interaction anymore. Barriers remain closed. Words go unacknowledged. People show no recognition. This generates intense feelings of abandonment and despair. Certain souls might spend days or even weeks wandering near their former bodies, particularly when death occurs without warning. Sudden accidents, cardiac events, or violent endings create such profound shock that the spirit requires considerable time to grasp its new circumstances. It resembles emerging from unconsciousness in an unfamiliar location with no one available to explain your whereabouts or recent events. Various spiritual philosophies, including Kardecist doctrine, teach that this immediate post-death period can significantly influence the soul's subsequent journey. When consciousness remains excessively bound to material concerns, unresolved suffering, or incomplete missions, it may become temporarily trapped in what practitioners call the intermediate zone or terrestrial sphere. This represents a liminal state where the soul continues experiencing the intensity of human emotions while lacking any physical means to act upon them. During this crucial phase, previously established spiritual connections become invaluable. Souls who nurtured lives of inner growth, faith, or charitable actions typically receive assistance more rapidly. Spiritual mentors manifest. Beings of pure light approach to facilitate the transition process. However, souls who lived disconnected from such influences may experience a more gradual, solitary process. Nevertheless, abandonment never occurs. It simply may require additional time to recognize the signs and guidance being offered. Remarkably, individuals approaching death often report encounters with deceased relatives during their final days. These visitations, which many dismiss as hallucinations brought on by medication or illness, may actually represent the soul's earliest contact with the spiritual realm, a preliminary awakening where it begins sensing the invitation from the other side. Additionally, during the initial hours following death, it's common for the soul to observe everything happening around its former body. The emergency response teams working, the tears of family members, the gathering of friends. All of this adds to the phase of confusion and disorientation. The soul witnesses everything, experiences every emotion, but no longer participates in the world as it once did. This rupture in reality often proves difficult to accept. The soul's heightened awareness during this period can be both blessing and burden. Many report being able to perceive the thoughts and emotions of those around them with startling clarity. They sense the guilt of a spouse who wishes they'd said, "I love you" one more time, the regret of children who lived too far away, the relief of family members who watched a long illness finally end. This emotional transparency, while sometimes painful, serves an important purpose in helping the soul understand the full impact of their earthly relationships and the love that surrounded them, even when unexpressed. Interestingly, some souls describe experiencing what could be called dimensional overlap, moments when they can partially interact with the physical world. They might successfully move a small object, cause a light to flicker, or create a brief temperature change in a room. These phenomena, often dismissed as coincidence by skeptics, represent the soul's attempt to communicate its continued presence and provide comfort to those grieving. Time continues its earthly progression, but in the spiritual dimension, temporal experience transforms completely. Nevertheless, according to numerous spiritual traditions, from Brazilian Spiritism to Tibetan Buddhist teachings to Hindu mystical practices, the initial 7 days create what could be described as a transition tunnel, an energetic pathway where the soul remains intimately connected to material reality. Following the initial shock of recognizing its separation from the physical body, the soul naturally seeks familiar landmarks and experiences. Some spirits choose to remain in the immediate vicinity, at hospital bedsides, or in the rooms where they passed, observing medical personnel completing paperwork and nurses maintaining equipment. Others accompany their family members, floating above vehicles traveling to funeral services, places of worship, or burial grounds. While no longer bound by urgency, they carry an internal compulsion to understand what has transpired and simultaneously ensure the well-being of those they cherish. During this symbolic time frame, funeral rites take on dual significance. For those still living, these ceremonies provide opportunities to express farewell, share cherished memories, and offer mutual support during grief. For the departed soul, these rituals represent the final chance to witness firsthand the impact of their passing. Each tear observed, every expression of appreciation, each interrupted smile speaks to the departing consciousness about the legacy they've left behind. Sensitive individuals and spiritual mediums often describe experiencing gentle air movements, sudden temperature changes, or a comforting presence moving among the floral arrangements. These serve as indicators that the soul remains present, navigating through this human ceremony that it participated in until very recently. The consciousness perceives fragrances, overhears conversations, and observes photographs displayed near the casket. These experiences help weave together the understanding that their earthly chapter has concluded, a necessary recognition that enables forward movement. Throughout these 7 days, the soul continues vibrating at a frequency remarkably similar to physical matter. This explains why the emotions of the living function like atmospheric currents, capable of either gently guiding the soul toward more luminous dimensions or anchoring it to the heavy layers of bitterness and regret. Anguished expressions of despair and statements of denial such as, "I cannot survive without you," generate energetic waves that entangle, perplex, and postpone the soul's release. Heartfelt prayers, loving recollections, and peaceful acceptance function as gentle beacons illuminating the path forward. Various cultures commemorate the seventh day through religious services, ceremonial gatherings, incense ceremonies, or intimate meetings to exchange stories and memories. From a spiritual perspective, this marks what could be called an energetic conclusion. The invisible threads still connecting the soul to its previous dwelling begin dissolving. When the soul has managed to accept its death, experienced supportive energy, and understood its transformed condition, its vibration elevates and a gateway, described as a luminous tunnel, a silver pathway, or a sapphire mist doorway, opens, beckoning it to advance. The appearance of this gateway often coincides with what many traditions call the gathering of guides. These are spiritual beings who have been patiently waiting for the soul to reach the appropriate vibrational frequency for transition. They might include deceased family members, spiritual teachers from past lives, guardian angels, or evolved souls whose purpose is to assist with transitions between dimensions. The soul often recognizes these beings instantly, feeling a profound sense of familiarity and trust that transcends current lifetime memories. This recognition process reveals something remarkable about the nature of spiritual relationships. The bonds we form with certain individuals, those instant connections, the feeling of having known someone forever upon first meeting, the inexplicable trust we place in certain people, often reflect deeper soul connections that span multiple lifetimes and dimensions. These spiritual family members serve as anchors of love and guidance throughout our journey, appearing at crucial moments to offer support and direction. Yet this process doesn't follow a rigid mathematical formula. Reports exist of spirits who complete this phase within hours, while others, overwhelmed by earthly attachments, may linger for months or longer. The 7-day period functions less as an absolute deadline and more as a universal pattern, reflecting the fundamental concept of completion found throughout nature, similar to lunar cycles or musical octaves. Once this cycle reaches fulfillment, the soul possesses the basic requirements to separate from Earth's dense frequency and enter more refined transitional realms. For those who remain behind, understanding that their departed loved one can still perceive their emotional emanations fundamentally changes their grieving experience. Converting pain into appreciation, sharing stories that honor accomplishments, offering prayers, or simply directing loving thoughts toward the deceased contributes meaningfully to their peace and spiritual progress. For individuals contemplating their own mortality, recognizing this 7-day corridor encourages living with fewer unresolved emotional conflicts, practicing forgiveness more freely, and constructing connections rather than barriers, all of which will facilitate their own eventual transition. Following the initial 7 days characterized by the soul's powerful presence near the physical realm, a more subdued yet equally significant phase commences: the 40 days of gradual release. During this extended period, the soul genuinely begins loosening its connections to material existence and embarks upon a comprehensive process encompassing reflection, restoration, and ultimate liberation. This concept of a 40-day period appears across diverse spiritual traditions worldwide. Within Christian teachings, Jesus reportedly remained among the living for 40 days following his resurrection before ascending to celestial realms. Spiritist doctrine views this cycle as a period of energetic cleansing and purification. Tibetan Buddhist philosophy describes the bardo, the interval between successive lifetimes, as potentially lasting this duration. This consistency isn't coincidental. The number 40 holds universal significance, representing metamorphosis and passage between states of being. Throughout these 40 days, the soul experiences something comparable to opening an ancient volume and carefully examining every page of the life recently concluded. The purpose isn't external condemnation or judgment. No figure appears wielding instruments of justice to pronounce verdicts of good or evil. Instead, this represents a deeply personal review process. The soul re-examines its decisions, emotions, and the motivations underlying every significant action. However, a crucial distinction emerges. The soul now experiences the effects it created in others' lives. If it caused pain during earthly existence, it now relives those moments from the perspective of those who suffered. If it expressed love, it re-experiences that affection with all the emotions it generated in recipients. This constitutes one of the most transformative aspects of the afterlife experience, gaining complete understanding of how one's actions rippled through other lives, both positively and negatively, as though finally perceiving the echoes left in every heart that was touched. During this stage, the soul typically receives companionship from luminous beings known across various traditions as spiritual counselors or guides. These entities don't appear to criticize or praise, but rather to provide assistance and understanding. They reveal alternative choices that could have been made, help the soul comprehend why certain hardships occurred, and most crucially, facilitate learning from these experiences. While the past cannot be altered, profound wisdom can be extracted from it. This learning becomes the foundation for genuine release from guilt, resentment, and the false perceptions that continue binding the soul to its former existence. During these 40 days, the soul's connections to material attachments, residence, possessions, profession, dependencies, relationships, begin gradually weakening. This doesn't indicate forgetting those who were beloved. Rather, it means recognizing these bonds in their most essential form, liberated from ego-driven illusions and the minor conflicts that often distorted earthly love. However, moving forward requires the practice of letting go. Many spirits experience distress during this period when observing family members desperately clinging to their memory, remaining inconsolable, attempting to maintain energetic connections through persistent thoughts focused on loss, vows never to forget, or promises never to continue living fully. The soul perceives this attachment, and despite the love that motivates it, this type of desperate bonding feels like heavy chains, restricting someone who needs to walk freely forward. This period also brings intensified dream encounters with the deceased. The soul may approach beloved individuals to offer signs, deliver messages, or simply share one final loving glance. These dreams possess extraordinary vividness, realism, and emotional depth, and frequently represent authentic meetings, providing the soul opportunities to conclude unfinished chapters, comfort grieving hearts, and request permission to depart peacefully. At the conclusion of the 40 days, a form of ultimate energetic liberation takes place. The soul, now feeling lighter and more aware of its spiritual journey, experiences readiness to enter more subtle dimensions of existence. It bids farewell to Earth while retaining genuine connections, loves that transcend physical presence, accumulated wisdom, and the essential core of its true being. For those continuing their earthly existence, this moment often manifests in unexpected ways: sudden inner peace, an intuitive sense that they're truly at rest now, or symbolic occurrences such as meaningful fragrances appearing unexpectedly, significant songs playing at perfect moments, or butterflies landing in impossible places. These subtle signs mark the beginning of the soul's authentic departure into higher realms. Among the most remarkable revelations for many individuals is discovering that death doesn't sever the bond between the departed and those who remain. Instead, this connection continues actively influencing both parties in profound ways. During this sensitive transition period, particularly throughout the initial months following departure from physical form, the emotions expressed by the living create powerful reverberations throughout the spiritual journey of the ascending soul. This might initially seem exaggerated, but consider this perspective. During life, when we share deep emotional connections with someone, we often intuitively sense their distress, even without verbal communication. Now imagine that same connection existing without the limitations imposed by physical bodies or the barriers created by ordinary senses. This precisely describes what occurs in spiritual dimensions. Emotions transform into direct energetic transmissions that reach the soul with unfiltered intensity. As previously discussed, mourning represents a natural human response. The anguish of separation, tears of sorrow, and feelings of longing all constitute normal elements of the farewell process. Problems arise when this love transforms into desperate clinging. When surviving individuals insist, either consciously or unconsciously, on maintaining the deceased bound to their emotional pain through statements like, "I cannot continue existing without you," "Why have you abandoned me?" or "Please return to me." These words carry such powerful emotional force that they function as spiritual restraints. The soul, having already begun its upward journey, feels these energetic bonds pulling it back toward earthly concerns and frequently, motivated by love and compassion, chooses to return. It remains nearby, attempts to provide comfort, and tries to communicate reassurance. However, in doing so, it becomes confused and delays its own spiritual progression. Numerous accounts describe spirits who remain energetically bound for months or even years around their loved ones, not from malicious intent, but because they feel responsible for their well-being. They believe they cannot depart while those they cherish remain in emotional devastation. This creates mutual suffering. The soul cannot ascend to higher realms, and the living cannot begin their healing process. This doesn't suggest that remembering should be abandoned. Quite the contrary. It means celebrating the presence that person brought to your existence without tying their memory exclusively to suffering and loss. Authentic love never disappears completely. It simply transforms into a different expression. When the soul finally feels liberated to continue its journey, it can also visit, inspire, and comfort you more effectively, because now space exists for those interactions to occur naturally. A pivotal moment arrives, following the processes of detachment and life examination, when the soul encounters either a conscious choice or an irresistible calling. This represents the opening of spiritual gateways, inviting the newly liberated consciousness to advance along its destined path. But what lies ahead? Does a predetermined destination await? Perhaps traditional concepts of paradise and punishment, peaceful colonies, or entirely new worlds? The reality proves less rigid than ancient religious doctrines once depicted, yet far more magnificent and complex. The soul's destination isn't a geographical location, but rather a vibrational manifestation of what it cultivated internally throughout its earthly experience. Spiritual gateways essentially function as frequency passages or dimensional doorways. Some souls enter these new planes under the guidance of advanced spiritual beings. Others experience an internal compass, an inner beacon calling them forward. Additionally, some souls, despite being freed from physical constraints, remain bewildered or trapped, unable to access any gateway, typically due to dense emotional states such as guilt, terror, vengeance, or excessive attachment to earthly concerns. These portals can lead to numerous different destinations and experiences. One of the most detailed descriptions of these realms comes from the extensive spiritist literature channeled through Chico Xavier. In works such as Astral City, communicated by the spirit André Louise, elaborate spiritual communities are described. Well-organized cities featuring buildings, healing centers, libraries, gardens, educational institutions, and research facilities where souls undergo phases of restoration, learning, and preparation for new experiences. Mediums from various countries and cultures report remarkably similar encounters and descriptions. These represent high-frequency environments accessible to souls who, despite human imperfections, lived with integrity, ethical principles, and genuine desire for personal growth. Within these communities, souls receive welcome, treatment, and gradual reconnection with their deeper spiritual essence. Beyond these organized colonies exist what are commonly termed astral dimensions. These levels of existence don't possess fixed boundaries, but rather consist of vibrational layers or frequencies. The higher the soul's spiritual frequency, the more luminous and beautiful these planes become. In these realms, time flows according to different principles. Matter becomes more responsive to consciousness. Thoughts directly create reality, and experiences become intensely symbolic and meaningful. Conversely, in denser planes, there exist zones characterized by confusion, suffering, and emotional imprisonment. Some traditions call these the borderlands, while others refer to them as shadow valleys. Many mistakenly believe these represent punishment, but they more accurately reflect direct manifestations of unresolved mental and emotional conflicts. Not every soul proceeds directly to an established colony or specific plane of existence. Many pass through transitional zones, areas designated for observation, waiting periods, or preliminary treatment. These function like emergency rooms in hospitals, where souls are received by experienced mentors, undergo vibrational assessments, and prepare for their next phase of existence. Within these spaces, many reunite with previously deceased family members, longtime spiritual guides, or even entities who accompanied their earthly lives without ever being consciously recognized. Ultimately, does the soul actively choose its destination? Both yes and no. The soul doesn't make selections as one might choose accommodations from a travel catalog, but rather becomes naturally drawn toward destinations, matching its vibrational frequency and spiritual development. However, souls possessing greater spiritual awareness, those who engaged in inner work during their lifetime, possess enhanced clarity during the transition moment. They sense the gateways opening, perceive the available invitations, and recognize the various paths. This clarity enables more conscious choice-making and allows their journey to continue with reduced resistance and confusion. After traversing the spiritual gateways and arriving at their vibrational destination, the soul enters a new phase, the period of spiritual healing and conscious re-education. Here it begins comprehending everything it experienced, everything it felt, and everything it still needs to develop. Most importantly, this is where genuine healing occurs. Yes, souls also carry wounds and traumas. Even liberated from physical form, consciousness may harbor emotional pain, ancient traumas, profound regrets, and burdens that weren't resolved through the death process. Contrary to popular belief, leaving the physical body doesn't erase everything and provide a completely fresh start. Because consciousness maintains its essential identity and accumulated experiences. Among the soul's initial experiences in subtle realms is reception into spaces specifically designed for energetic and emotional restoration. Many traditions describe these places as radiant, peaceful chambers where specialized entities work with love and wisdom. Here, the soul truly rests in the most literal sense. Some spirits sleep for days, weeks, or even months by earthly measurement. This represents deep, restorative slumber necessary for reorganizing their energetic structure and processing their recent transition. It's comparable to a decompression period, like a deep-sea diver who must rise gradually to prevent collapse from pressure changes. Others undergo more active therapeutic treatments. They receive magnetic healing, become enveloped in subtle vibrational energies, or participate in counseling and clarification sessions with spiritual mentors. All of this serves a single purpose: restoring the being's fundamental balance and harmony. Following the restoration phase, the soul receives invitations to expand its consciousness and understanding. This occurs through education, not theoretical, abstract knowledge, but living, practical wisdom applied directly to spiritual growth. Schools exist within the subtle planes. Yes, actual educational institutions. However, the teaching methodology differs dramatically from earthly learning. Knowledge doesn't come solely from books, but through direct experiences, vibrational simulations, and sharing between spirits of varying developmental levels. The soul revisits past errors and mistakes, but now with complete clarity and understanding. It comprehends the impact of emotions and learns about universal principles such as cause and effect, vibrational resonance, energetic harmony, and unconditional love. Perhaps most significantly, it begins understanding its true identity beyond the ego, liberated from titles, names, physical appearance, and nationality. The soul discovers itself as pure essence. This recognition alone constitutes a profound form of healing. As strength and awareness increase, the soul begins preparing for its next evolutionary step. This doesn't necessarily mean immediate reincarnation. Multiple possibilities exist. Some souls choose to remain longer in the subtle planes, deepening their understanding, assisting other transitioning consciousnesses, or developing specialized abilities. They become agents of the spiritual realm, engaging in missions of support, rescue, or inspiration among those still living on Earth. Others, upon recognizing what they still need to develop, decide to return to physical matter for a new incarnation. This decision isn't made impulsively or carelessly. It represents a conscious process, discussed thoroughly with guides and mentors, and adjusted with precise planning. Every detail of the future existence receives careful consideration. The family environment, social circumstances, challenges to be faced, gifts to be developed, and the meetings and separations that will serve as catalysts for continued evolution. The planning process for reincarnation involves far more detail and spiritual guidance than most people imagine. Many wonder, can the soul visit Earth during this period? Absolutely. And in fact, this occurs much more frequently than most people realize. We're not discussing reincarnation here, but rather spiritual visitations. Moments when the soul, already fully disincarnated, temporarily returns to Earth to observe, comfort, bid farewell, provide protection, or simply remain close to those it loves. These visitations manifest in ways so subtle they often go completely unnoticed. While others are so powerful, there's no doubt whatsoever. They were definitely here. Multiple ways exist for souls to manifest among the living, and these vary based on the spirit's evolutionary level, its emotional connection to those on Earth, and the specific purpose of the visit. Dream encounters. This represents one of the most frequent and impactful forms of spiritual contact. Anyone who has lost a beloved person has likely experienced this phenomenon, dreaming of that individual in such a vivid, lifelike manner that upon awakening, it feels like a genuine encounter occurred. And frequently, it actually was. These aren't ordinary dreams, but actual astral plane meetings made possible by the release of the physical body during sleep. The soul of the living person meets with the soul of the deceased. They exchange glances, embraces, and words that remained unspoken during physical life, returning with lighter hearts as though something important had been resolved. These dreams often contain remarkable details, brilliant colors, physical sensations, and clear messages. We awaken saying, "That wasn't just a dream. I know they visited me." And this intuition is typically accurate. Subtle manifestations in daily experiences. Sometimes the soul doesn't appear visually, but leaves unmistakable signs of its presence. A recognizable fragrance that appears without explanation. A meaningful song that begins playing at precisely the right moment, with lyrics that convey everything needed. An object that falls without apparent cause. A gentle breeze during moments of deep sadness or contemplation. These represent tender touches, indications that someone dear remains nearby. These manifestations occur more frequently when the soul senses that someone requires support or comfort. It comes, observes, and provides solace. While it may not always intervene directly, its presence alone brings comfort and inner strength. Direct spiritual appearances. In rarer instances, usually involving mediums or naturally sensitive individuals, the soul may manifest in nearly visible form: a silhouette, a light in the room, an image beside the bed, or sometimes an audible voice. This isn't common, and not every soul possesses permission or the ability to manifest in this manner. Protective guidance. Certain situations exist where the soul, particularly if it already functions as a guide or protector, may directly intervene in the life of the incarnated person, preventing accidents, inspiring important decisions, or gently nudging someone toward beneficial changes in direction. The person experiences premonitions, strong intuitive feelings, or senses an invisible hand providing guidance. And that's precisely what occurs. How can we encourage these encounters? Maintaining an open heart represents the essential first step. Finding peace with the departure, accepting the natural life cycle, and cultivating positive emotions creates a safe bridge between dimensions. Sincere prayers provide assistance, as does remembering the person with joy, speaking to them with affection, even without expecting verbal responses. Most importantly, avoid obsessive waiting or demanding. Spiritual visits don't occur on command or according to our schedules. The soul appears when circumstances are appropriate, and only when such contact won't cause harm to them or those still on Earth. This is why releasing attachment becomes necessary. Loving without making demands, allowing higher spiritual planes to guide the process. Interestingly, even after someone departs, we often begin perceiving life through transformed perspectives. We feel more deeply. We appreciate more fully. We recognize that everything truly meaningful cannot be seen, but must be felt, and that the vibrational frequency we maintain influences not only our own spiritual journey, but also affects those we love both here on Earth and in spiritual dimensions. This moment often awakens people to something essential. the responsibility we bear for our own energetic emanations. Every thought, every emotion, every expression of gratitude or love contributes to building bridges between realities. It's no coincidence that many elevated souls can visit their loved ones with ease. They maintain high vibrational frequencies, and living individuals who keep their energetic fields clean, light, and conscious can perceive these visitations because they remain in harmonic resonance. If you sense this calling to reconnect, to transform your vibrational frequency and begin manifesting a life more aligned with your authentic essence, I invite you to explore the Quantum Consciousness Challenge, a 21-day program focused on daily gratitude practice. You'll reprogram your mental patterns and unlock your complete energetic potential. It involves 3 weeks of conscious practice, vibrational elevation, and activation of your connection with the most subtle and profound aspects of existence. Many participants report experiencing genuine transformations in their lives. Perhaps this represents your perfect moment for growth and change. You can access this program through the first pinned comment below. Throughout this initial year following departure from physical form, specific moments are recognized as vibrational gateways, instances acknowledged across various traditions as openings between dimensional realms. The 7th day, as we've explored, marks the first major energetic release. The 40th day signifies the completion of the detachment cycle from material concerns, and the first anniversary of death is considered a complete closure, representing a kind of spiritual harvest of what was cultivated during life and throughout the transition process. When a full year has elapsed since a soul's departure, something shifts both energetically and spiritually. It's as though a cosmic circle finally achieves completion, enabling that consciousness to advance with greater freedom and lightness. Simultaneously, those remaining on Earth can transform their pain into peaceful remembrance and spiritual understanding. At this juncture, most souls have already established themselves in their new phase of existence, redirected to appropriate spiritual planes, engaged in new missions of service, or perhaps preparing for another earthly incarnation. For the living, the first death anniversary need not be marked solely by sorrow and longing. It can also become a celebration of life's continuity and transformed expression. This represents a moment to look toward higher realms or inward toward the heart, and recognize that everything, absolutely everything, participates in a grander, more magnificent cycle of existence and spiritual evolution. Understanding how consciousness affects reality becomes crucial for anyone seeking to create positive change in their life. The observer effect reveals how your awareness literally shapes your experiences and reality itself, offering practical tools for transformation that can revolutionize how you approach manifestation and personal growth.